Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me again. I am Cassandra, and I have a question for you. Did you know that your journey into motherhood may have begun long before your baby was ever conceived? Or that your child may already be communicating with you on a soul level before they arrive? Our next guest offers a fascinating perspective that bridges science and spirituality. After more than 20 years as a registered nurse caring for over 7,000 babies in the NICU, she now helps women understand the deeper soul journey of motherhood and the sacred connection they share with their children, both before birth and beyond the physical. This is going to be very interesting. I'd like to welcome Lauren Dionysius. Hello.
Hi, Cassandra. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem. This is very interesting. I don't really recall a whole lot of people with connections or working with the unborn right now. I think it's very interesting, and I have a couple of questions for you uh,
Hmm.
that maybe helping people out there because I believe everyone who comes to the show is meant to come to the show. So
Yeah.
this is going to give you information, and it might be a little eye-opening because I think it is. So my first question, you speak about understanding a baby's soul journey beyond the physical.
Hmm.
What do you believe every parent should know about why souls choose their families and this particular time to incarnate?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question because I think what I've learned was talking with lots of parents is that they take on so much responsibility and put so much pressure on themselves, not only for conception, for the birth, for raising these children, and especially parents in today's world that may be more self aware or may have done a lot of work on themselves, different types of healing, ancestral trauma, all of these things, that they feel so much pressure. Like, I need to not necessarily protect my child, but I don't want to project anything onto them, or because there's so much awareness there. But what so many don't realize is that on the soul level, today's children, they already know what they're coming into. They know they've chosen their parents. They know their quirks. They know their traumas. They know their patterns. And a big part of the parents' journey right now is to start uncovering and working through some of these patterns so that they're not passed on with the same intensity or unconsciousness perhaps from previous generations, but also it's not the parent's sole responsibility to undo generations and generations of pattern in just one generation. It's just starting the process, and then today's children, when they come through, they will then continue that process, as will generations beyond them as well. So that's what I come up against a lot, these parents that are like, I've done the work, I've done this, and I'm like, but I'm so worried about my children taking this on or taking that on. And I say to them, your child's soul already knows a big part of their journey before they come to earth. And so that's the blessing I feel of understanding the soul's journey, or knowing that your child, as I said, they know what they're coming into. It's not a surprise. The exact day-to-day unfolding of these things, yes, has more fluidity and is more open, I guess, and exposed or at the mercy of today's energies. But the bigger themes, the bigger pictures are not a surprise to today's children. So I like to say that because I think it can help take some of the pressure of today's parents to feel like I just need to get it right. I need to not make the mistakes my parents did, or I need to, I don't want to damage my child, or all of these things. But no, today's children, they know, they already have a really good understanding on the soul level, of what they're coming into. So I hope that helps to answer that question.
That's it's interesting because I always know, or my belief is, before we come here, we say, okay, we're going to be with these people and we're going to go with this life and this and this and this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come here and we forget it. We have
Yeah.
no clue what we're supposed to
Yeah.
be doing. Is it the
Yeah.
same as what you're saying here? I mean, they do know on a soul level what
Yeah.
they're here for, but they have that amnesia.
Yeah.
And how do you help with that? Because right now you're helping the parents saying,
Yeah.
don't worry so much. You're
Yeah.
not going to screw it up. Everybody can't get it right, but
Yeah.
the parents' awareness is what I find interesting because most people who are trying to come into that awareness and to know how the universe works, yeah, they might have a little uh, trepidation about how they're going to raise this child. But as you said,
Yeah.
that child knows. And
Yeah.
on another soul level, the parents know because
Yeah.
they knew.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everybody kind of knows, but they don't know.
And that's it. Yeah. And I often say to parents, sometimes you do need to, just for the understanding, like, you do need to separate the soul's perspective from the lived human experience. Because even though, like, the soul knows and understands and has a good idea of what they're coming into, as I was saying, like, that day-to-day human experience can be very different to that. We don't come to earth for an easy ride. We come to learn and grow as a soul. And I do believe, from what I have seen and experienced with today's children, that amnesia that you mentioned, or that disconnect between the human and the soul, it's not as separate or as disconnected as it was in previous generations. A lot of today's children are coming through without that in amnesia, or with less amnesia. They come in with and maintaining more of that connection with the soul realms, with the spirit realms, with their own soul. And so on one level, that is beautiful and amazing, but on the other level, it can also be incredibly jarring and incredibly difficult for today's children. If you come in knowing this, you think, oh, well, it should make life easier, but it doesn't always, because there's such a contrast between the soul's energy and the soul's essence and the 3D human experience of being in a physical body.
So these new souls that are coming in, you're saying that they have a um, notion of why they're here and what they're supposed to be doing. They don't have complete amnesia.
Yeah.
And these souls that are coming in now, I feel that they're here to do more work,
Yeah.
maybe to clear things up or to help with technology that
Yeah.
will help mankind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting that those of us who came in with that blank slate, we learn later on in life why we're here.
Yeah.
And now the ones that are coming in now learn like from the get-go. They already know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there is that um um I don't know, it's an acceleration is what I would feel because
Yeah.
from me to the people coming in now, why do you feel that acceleration?
I think there's a few reasons for it. I think yes, you're right. I think there is an acceleration. Probably the biggest thing I've found though is that the types of souls coming to Earth now are different. You know, it's we're seeing less of the what I call the frequent flyer Earth souls. You know, that are many of us as adults now in our 30s and 40s are those and beyond are those frequent flyer souls. You know, we've been to Earth many times before. We've had many lifetimes here on Earth. We know the drill. I mean, of course, each lifetime here on Earth is different periods of time, different historically, like, you know, all of these different experiences that we have. And there are a few children like that, you know, these frequent flyer Earth souls who are continuing to come. But what I'm seeing is more and more children who either, or souls who haven't been to Earth for a really long time, hundreds of years, or an increasing number of souls who have never been to the Earth before. And so, you know, I don't know the full picture, but I know there's many other places that a soul can incarnate to in this universe, and Earth is just one of those places. And we're seeing a lot more children, a lot more souls who have been to these other places, so they have that that wisdom, that knowing, that that growth already, but it hasn't come from lifetimes here on Earth. It's come from lifetimes in other places. So they're bringing a different type of wisdom with them to the Earth. But also, if you haven't been to a planet before, then that's also going to bring up different challenges as well that we are seeing in today's children. But yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing is the difference in souls. We're getting, I call them the new wave of old souls. So they're not brand new young souls who are inexperienced as souls, though some of them are. A lot of these are actually old souls, but they're not old Earth souls. As I said, they've collected their wisdom from other places, and they're bringing that wisdom to the Earth at this time, which is what the Earth needs. So they're coming in, as you said, they're coming in already knowing from the get-go, but it's a different type of knowing to the knowing that comes from coming to Earth repeatedly. I don't know, does that make sense? It can be
Oh,
hard to
that's
explain.
it. No, that makes perfect sense because I have never thought about an new old soul, but this old soul has been traveling everywhere else, gathering that information, and then is coming here to use it.
Yeah,
I was just under the impression there are old souls and there are new souls. You know,
yeah,
the people that come in like the crystal children and you know the names that they've given these new people that come in. But
mm-hmm.
I never thought about it like that. And it makes so much sense because how can someone who's never been here but has traveled the universe come here and come up with something so brilliant that we have never heard of or never thought of? It's
Yeah,
because they've already experienced it on another planet in another
yeah,
lifetime.
yeah,
That right there just fascinates me. So it
yeah,
makes
yeah,
perfect sense now. They're not coming back because you know they decided to come back and they have, you know, all this knowledge that they can finish now in this day and age. You know, sometimes people come back to have closure to finish things or
mm-hmm.
you know, whatever it is they need to do. But these people are coming because they have new technology.
Yeah.
They have
New
new
perspectives. Yeah.
perspectives. Yeah. Oh, this is really very interesting. Um, you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned receiving guidance from angelic and galactic beings. How has
Mm-hmm.
that expanded your understanding of the souls arriving on Earth today? And what do you feel these souls are here for to teach humanity?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've had a very strong connection with angels since I had my first angelic experience at the age of 18 months. And so, even though I had a very strict religious upbringing, angels were still a part of that because it was part of the church I went to, but it's very different now. And then the galactic side of things only came in for me, in the last decade, in the last 8 to 10 years. But especially the galactic side of things really gave me some insight into those souls who are coming, because a lot of the children who are coming at this time have originated from these different galaxies, from these different races of galactic beings who I have been communicating with, as I said, for the last few years. So they've been able to shine the light on what was for me as a human quite a foreign concept around souls coming from different places. And, keeping in mind the first 20 years of my life, I was in a very traditional Christian church. And so, it was a big shift for me, but it was also really helpful because it's like I could start seeing things with a brand new lens of curiosity, and something that was so new to me, and something that I knew wasn't coming from my own beliefs. It was coming from outside of me to receive. And what I've learned from these beings, but also today's children, is what they're coming here to do is they're coming here for change. They're coming here to change systems, and we're already seeing that. For example, the education system. I know when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, the only option was you go to a public school or a private school. There was a little bit of homeschooling for some children that may live quite remotely, because I grew up in Australia, so there was a lot of remote communities, but that was the only options. Whereas now there's so many different types of education models or curriculums that are showing up, all over the world, that because children are showing their parents that the traditional school system does not fit their or is not for their highest good. It's not going to help nurture this wisdom and this energy that they've come in with. So that's just one system and there's a huge wave of children who are coming right now who that's a big part of what they're here to change, is the education system. They're also challenging what it means to be a family. We're seeing a lot more children come through IVF with donor eggs, donor sperm, solo mums by choice. There's lots of different ways to be a family now, rather than mum, dad, 2.3 kids and a dog, so they're also really coming to challenge that nuclear family that we've come to kind of accept and even strive for in the West. Whereas a lot of children are like, no, I'm here for the mother, or I'm here for the father, and I want to come through IVF because that's something different for me, and very, very aligned actually with souls who haven't been to the earth before, because they can bypass a lot of that ancestral patterns that I was talking about earlier. So so education, they're coming to change. Healthcare, they're coming to change. Families, they're coming to change. Communication, healing modalities, how we raise children, how we parent them. There's so many dimensions of everyday life that they're coming to shift, and they're coming in waves to do that. So it's not like a one-man job. It's like this huge I see it as a wave of children who may be here for education, or maybe here for healthcare, or maybe here for families, and some have multiple roles in all of those systems as well. So especially those children who haven't been to Earth, they're really coming to shake things up here on Earth, and it's being driven by them, by their energy, and by their perspectives and their behavior, which it can be challenging on the 3D day-to-day level, but in the collective, in that bigger picture, it's already creating change in all of these systems that I mentioned.
I also feel that these changes that these new souls are bringing, the old souls that are here who have woken up, when they're older, kind of feel there's like a mesh,
Mm-hmm.
the old and the new, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
older and all of a sudden I get this technology thing that I would have never figured out if my life depended on it. And
Yeah.
now it's like technology. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Other people who are in my same age bracket, they're like, oh, no, I don't want
Yeah.
anything to. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, it's the greatest thing that I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
with that, with the older people that are coming in, they're kind of working in a way with the younger people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in what ways have you seen that happen?
Yeah, well, I've seen it happen with, yes, definitely in the, well, it's interesting because I feel with, in the older generation, say the grandparents and great grandparents of these babies, of these children, there's kind of, and you've sort of clarified this anyway, which is the way I see it. There's these almost like these two camps. There's those that are that embrace it. There's a because the children are bringing through all this new energy, and it's in the field, right? It's in the collective. And so what
Mhm.
I'm finding is, and I see this with my own parents, like my mum is very open to technology, and she will embrace it, and my dad's like, oh, no, 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 like that's, and they're in their 70s now. And so it depends, I think, on the energy of that older person as to, are they curious? Are they open to the new? Or are they, like my dad, like, set in his ways and like, no, no, don't need that at this age, like, and my mum being really open. But I also noticed too that my mum is incredibly spiritually open. And so I think that has a part to play um in her receptiveness or her openness to what's in the collective right now. And with, as I said, because this, using the technology example as the example, because there is so much expansion and so much um, growth around technology at this time, it's like, yes, again, same with the older generations, they're either going to be open and curious to that, or they're going to be overwhelmed or just simply not interested in that. And so I think it depends then on the soul journey of I think of like my parents and grandparents as to whether they're here to learn from these children, or whether they're here because there's also these old souls that I was talking about, the frequent flyers to earth. For some of them, like, their role is to hold that energy, is to not change, to create the contrast needed for the growth and the evolution and the expansion of the new. Having the old there as the contrast to that, well, in some ways it can be an anchor or it can be grounding, but it also creates like best way I can describe the energy I sense around this is that it creates the contrast needed for the new to grow. And so I think the older generation, they have a really big role to play in this, around holding that old. And I think of my dad, and he goes to church every Sunday, and he's very much holding that traditional human experience. And I have no judgment against that. Like, that's obviously his journey as a soul in this life, is to hold that energy as contrast for all of the growth, awareness, awakenings that are happening on the planet at this time.
And do you feel that, I know you're saying the older awaken people. They're here to be an anchor, a grounding. But
Mm-hmm.
do you also feel that they're here to help wake up some of the more older people?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are because, as I said, that those older generations that have so much earth wisdom, right? And maybe not from other places, but have a lot of earth wisdom. Yeah, again, it depends on the soul's journey. I do believe that at every stage of the lifespan, there are people here planted here whose journey is to wake up the people around them. And I think it depends on that soul, and it depends on who they're around as well. Because as I said, some I don't mean this just with the older generation. I think of I know people in their 30s and 40s who are also very focused on the 3D human world. They're not open to anything beyond that. So it's not just the older generation. But so there are people who are here to obviously awaken those around them, or at least I tend to say more to set the example of awakening, and then people are either drawn to that and curious about that, or they're perhaps fearful or uncertain of that and they just block it out and are not interested. So I think it happens, yeah, along the whole lifespan. But I think because there's more and more children and souls coming through who are not necessarily pre-awakened already, although that's probably the closest term in English I can come to. It does put not pressure, but it does bring more focus or more energy or not energy, opportunity into the older generations to say, hey, like, this is what's coming in behind you. What would you like to do? Would you like to lean into that and expand your own soul and awakening processes? Or are you wanting to just stay where you are and turn a blind eye to that? So I think there's a concentration and probably a lot more energy around that in the older generations, but I think it's through the whole lifespan, if that makes sense.
It does, because I know my belief is when we come here, we already know the people that we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
traveling with, our
Yeah.
soul groups. Um, and it's kind of like we volunteered. It's like, okay, I'm going to teach you
Mm-hmm.
at this time because I'm going to meet you at this time. And then I'm basically going to give you a choice. Do you
Yeah.
want to open up
Mm-hmm.
or don't you? Because
Yeah.
obviously it's their choice if they want to do that.
Yes.
So I think that's interesting. Okay. The old
Mm.
and the new, the anchor and the helping everything kind of do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
that
And the
always
choice.
helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that you speak telepathically to unborn babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about mothers who are doubting their intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some ways that they can begin trusting the messages that they're already receiving from their
Yeah.
babies, whether it's in spirit or, earth side, because they're with them 24/7.
Yeah.
And if they're getting messages, how does one get messages from your unborn baby, and how can a mother trust that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful question. And what I've come to understand is that babies babies a child's soul and spirit, whether there is preconception or whether they're already here on the earth, they communicate in certain ways. And to me, it's different, and their energy feels different to say a grandmother that's passed away at the other end of the life cycle of the lifespan. So I think by understanding how babies and children communicate before they're born, it can help give a little more confidence to women, when they are thinking, am I picking up something? Or because it's important to remember that, our intuition is it's what connects us to the soul realms, right? It's that bridge, it's that flow of energy. So there's a couple of different ways. I'll stick with what I was talking about, which is how babies communicate. They can send signs, but what I find most common with today's children is they will send images. They will send feelings. Is probably the strongest. So today's children, because they're very energetically sensitive, I would say at least 50% of the souls I communicate with preconception, their strongest way of communicating is through feeling. And so they will send me feelings in my body, sensations in my body. They will send me emotion or energy that I can translate into emotions and feelings. Probably the next most common is through visual. So today's children are many of today's children are very, very visual. So it's very easy for them to send you an image or send you a picture. So if a woman is, experiencing or seeing, images in her mind's eye, that can also be a very strong sign. What also happens, this is more for children who have been to Earth a few times or a lot of times, is their communication strength can be through hearing, but it's less common preconception. Because, and it makes sense because, if you haven't been to Earth before, you're not used to speaking this language, whether it's English or French or German, the language doesn't matter, but that the energy that creates language here on Earth, if that's not something you're exposed to before, for many souls, it's going to be a lot harder to connect with that energy and communicate with that energy through, like, before they've been conceived. So that's how children communicate, which is great. But what is important for women is to understand how they communicate as well. Excuse me, but because for example, if your child is a very strong visual communicator and they're sending you images, but you're more feeling focused or auditory, so you can hear things. Maybe you hear your grandmother's voice, or you feel the energy of your angels, for example, but you don't tend to see visual images like light or color or past life images or other images that may come through, then it's like you'll miss each other. So, a child sending a visual thing and you're in the auditory thing, and there's a misalignment in the frequency of communication, like here on Earth. If you have someone saying something to you, but you've been triggered, and so now you're all in your feelings and you're sort of tuned out of the hearing side of it. So that's one big thing where women can really question themselves, because they may receive this image, and because it's not something they're necessarily familiar with or had experience with, they question it. But another thing I always say to women is that focus on the direction the communication is coming to you. We can make up a lot of stuff as humans, and our mind, if we don't understand something from the spirit realm, our minds will totally fill in the blanks and try to make meaning out of something. So I always say to women is that, we have that intuitive experience first. We see that image, we feel that feeling, we hear those words. That's something that comes first. The doubt comes in secondary. The doubt comes in over the top in response to that first experience. So if you can have that experience and put in that full stop, and it's like, oh, I just saw an image, or, oh, I just heard a word, or, oh, I just felt this in my body, or I feel the energy of my child around me, is like, can you pause there and put a full stop there and just allow that to be the experience that it was? And you can ask more questions. You can ask for more information around that. But where a lot of women get tripped up and start to really go into doubt is their mind gets in the way and tries to fill in the blanks. They try to understand it. Whereas if you can just leave that experience as it was, even if it was just one flash or one word, full stop, and then you can come back to that or ask for more. And as I said, you have the intuitive experience first, and then the doubt comes in. So that can be comforting for women. It's like, oh yeah, well, I received that. I wasn't going looking for it. It wasn't coming from my mind. And then you start to sense the direction. Was that experience, was that word, was it coming from inside of you? Or that image, were you thinking about birds and then you saw a bird? Or did it feel like the picture or the words or the feeling was coming outside of you towards you? So I say to women, can you feel the direction of that intuition? Which way across your intuition, that bridge between human and spirit? If it was coming from you out there, then it's coming from you, from the human side of things. If it's coming towards you, then that is wisdom coming most likely, because we're talking about babies and children, from their soul, their spirit, because it's coming from them towards you, not from you out. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's a few little ways.
And why would the baby want to communicate with the mother? I mean, is there just to let them know that they're there, to give them messages, to whatever?
Yeah, well, it can be just simply for, especially in the case of women who are trying to conceive, it can be for reassurance that there's a lot of women think, oh, maybe there's no child that's chosen me. Whereas if a child can share their presence or help a woman to feel, see, or hear them, then it gives the woman some more confidence and reassurance that, oh, there is a child who's chosen me, and it can help them to say remain committed to the path, or be more patient or more trusting in the process. But also another reason for communicating or connecting is that there may be something that that the child needs in order to conceive. And I've had so many different messages come in around this, some really 3D human experiences, like the house that they're living in is not conducive to this child. Perhaps it's too small, it's not big enough, or it's in a really, like, it might be in a high-rise building in a big city, and this child is like, no, that's not going to be helpful for me or for you. And when this comes through, it's 99% of the time the woman is saying, oh, well, we've been thinking about like moving to the suburbs or moving to a smaller town, or so it's never normally a surprise. It can also be, sometimes they will share messages around, maybe there's a particular vitamin or some kind of deficiency or some kind of physical health need that is perhaps missing in this woman, or she's depleted in some way, and they can share that wisdom. She may need supplementation for a particular thing. So it can range from something very 3D, like your health or say where you live, or it can also it can be age as well. A lot of today's children, especially those who haven't been to Earth before, are wanting, older parents are wanting women in their 40s, because that's the level of spiritual awareness, emotional maturity, life experience, all of these things that they need in order for their parent to be who they need to be, that they couldn't have been that when the parent was 25, for example. And also what I was going to say now, it's completely gone. I don't know, maybe I wasn't meant to say whatever I was going to say. No, it can actually be things around healing as well. So that's the other side. It can be on the physical level, their wisdom and their messages and what they want to share and why they want to communicate. But it can also be quite esoteric and on the soul level as well. There may be, for example, womb healing around, birth trauma in this life, but also previous lifetimes, ancestral birth trauma that's been, carried down through the mother line that may need to be cleared before a child is conceived through that energy that's there, let alone being birthed through that energy as well. So it can range, as I said, from a very 3D um, wisdom or messages to much more esoteric and soul wisdom that comes through, and anything in between that. So
What do you call yourself? Are you, you're not, well, I don't know. What do you call yourself?
I call myself a baby soul communicator. I see myself as being on that bridge between worlds, and um, you know, being that vessel, and being that energy that children, because I've had an unusually vast exposure to the energy of babies and children because of my career as a nurse and working in NICU for most of those years. So I've had a unusually large exposure to the energy and the energy fields of children. So I can feel their subtle energy, and then pass that on to parents. But my deeper passion actually lies with something you touched on earlier around helping women to trust their intuition, because we're all connected to the soul realms by default, right? It's just that, as you mentioned, the doubt that can get in the way. It can be fear, it can be old programming that interferes with that connection. So I'm working increasingly with women who kind of think they're communicating with their baby soul, but they're not sure, or they want to and they feel blocked. So that's my deeper passion with this work, is that I believe everybody can connect with their baby soul. It's just clearing the clutter out of the way that is blocking that energy from flowing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
fear and conditioning will get you every time, won't it?
absolutely, it will trip you up. 100%.
Lauren, how can people reach you?
You can reach me on my website, which is bornenergy.com.au. I'm also on Instagram under the same name, born_energy. I'm not on social media a lot these days. My main platforms are my email. I love to write, so I love to share information by email to those who are interested without having to fight the algorithms. And I also have my own podcast called Babies from Beyond, which is mostly solo episodes where I answer questions that women have. For example, why did I have a miscarriage? Why did I have an emergency cesarean section? Why hasn't my baby come yet? And all questions like that. So that's available on wherever you find your podcasts.
Okay, I could sit here and ask you a lot more questions, but we're out of time right now. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your heart with us today. We appreciate you being here for sure, and encourage everyone to connect with you and learn more about your work. Um, this is just an incredible journey of the soul, and I've never heard this before. So that's why I'm very, very fascinated about you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, my audience, for joining us. I'll have the links to Lauren's um, connections or how you can reach her in the description. I am Cassandra, and I will talk to you next time.
Thank you.